All right, we are going to get started. Our moderator woke up not feeling well, so this is going to be an unmoderated session. There's going to be no moderation. And we are really excited to talk to Carolina, and I are from the Center for Academic Belonging and Learning Excellence here on campus. We are excited to talk to you guys about a framework for office hour visits that we feel can be really powerful based on the experiences that we've had using this in our academic success coaching. And because it relies so heavily on Matt Sanders' book, Becoming a Learner, we asked that he also be here to give you guys some context about that book and what it was that the things that he was seeing and the things that he was experiencing that made it so that he thought it was important to put down his thoughts about becoming a learner in a book. So I will turn the time over to Matt.
Okay, let me get this set on here. I'm really happy to be here, and I don't want to take too much time away from Jenny and Carolina. Their work is just tremendous, and I'm really excited about what they've been putting together and recommend it to all of you and look forward to seeing this spread out through the university. Some of you are familiar with the book, probably most of you, and if not, I hope you get a chance to look through it. This thesis here that the primary purpose of college isn't to learn a professional set of skills, but it's to becoming a learner, and the thing that you take with you over time is your ability to learn and unlearn and relearn, is a really important message for students. Students generally have two, if I just categorize their reactions in two categories, one would be, oh, thank goodness, this is what I wanted college to be like, and this makes me feel good, and then the other set of reactions is, what? And because they're thinking about, you know, med school or a technical degree and all of those sorts of things. And either response is totally fine because we want to engage them in this conversation about what it means to learn how to learn and how that's your ability to carry you through your life and its successes. What you don't put in a book is like the experience that took you there and have that moment. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit. When I was a senior graduating as an undergraduate and I'm walking to my job and I've been thinking about applying for jobs and I'm applying for grad school and I'm just stewing over this and I'm applying for jobs and I thought I was going to be all this, you know, this hot stuff when I graduated, and I was a good student, but like I had no work, you know, no significant work experience, all the things that you wrestle with when you graduate from college. And I just had this moment walking to I was a copy editor for a student marketing group, and I just had this moment of like, it was about learning how to learn. Like, that's why you were here. And then, of course, looking backwards, I'm like, boy, I did a bunch of things well, and I did a lot of things poorly, and I didn't take advantage of certain things that I should have. And once I personally took that mindset on through graduate school and all my work, it's just helped me do better. And so then my motivation was, I want to tell the students I'm teaching about this. So I worked on it, taught it informally, wrote a small essay, worked on this until I published the book in 2012. I want you to think about this book as a framing device. It's used in connections. So you got 75% of our students who have been exposed to this book and have hopefully at least read it in a cursory fashion. It's short. I had a lot of people tell me I should write it really long when I was writing it because I was a professor and needed to have a long book. And I think the shortness of the book matters because it allows you to fill in what matters to you. But for me as a teacher, this language, as I've set it up in my classrooms, because I always use the first week of class to talk about, you know, introduce the course and then talk about becoming a learner and then move into the content. It's always allowed me to have better conversations with my students about the things that they're struggling with the most. So, for example, you know you have these experiences where a student comes into you and it's partway through the semester and they've had a health crisis, a family emergency, mental health struggles, whatever it is, and they've missed an exam or they've done really poorly on something and their grade has gone down the tank a little bit, and then they're trying to get back on their feet. So from this becoming a learner standpoint, I've always just said, okay, look, let's just take your grade aside for a minute. Let's not worry about the transaction that we're involved in. Let's just think about what it means to learn and what it means to become a learner. Oh, did I knock some stuff down? Sorry. And I would say, okay, what are you learning here? How are you, who are you becoming? And let's have you, if you pick this up, yeah, you can get your grade back over to here, but think about the fact that you've fallen down, you've gotten up, you've picked up the pieces, you've sought help, you've got feedback, and you make it to the end of the semester. You'll get the grade and you'll pass the class and all these things will be here. But you will be a really different person, and the most important thing you will have learned this semester was nothing to do with this class, but it was, I got back up. And I got on my feet, you know, that kind of a conversation, because you're really here to learn how to learn, and you'll forget a lot of the content in my class, but you won't forget how you engage in the process of learning. And I have given that sort of canned response. I don't mean canned in a bad way, but just like it's the common conversation. And I was walking just by the Ag building a couple of years ago, and a student stopped me, was working here now as an adult, and probably 10 years. Do you remember me? And, you know, it takes you a quick second. And I always get the name last, right? But yeah. Do you remember that conversation we had in your office about that hard thing I went through? And I had I did not associate my memory of her with any of that at all. That has stuck with me, and that was one of the most influential moments in my college career, because I spoke with her about the broader enterprise of learning rather than just the transaction of how do you get your grade back on. Now, it's good to have that conversation about how you get back up and pass the class. Like, that's super important. But what Jenny and Carolina are going to talk about is this layer on top of this, to have these conversations with students to help them. And I think there's a number of students on this campus that are going to graduate no matter what happens and what we throw at them and what life throws at them. They're going to go. But these kinds of conversations can have a really outsized impact on those students who are unsure about their ability, who might be struggling to feel like they belong. These conversations on a higher level. So as you think about this framework and the Becoming a Learner book, it's a shared vocabulary that we have on campus. Please tap into that vocabulary. And a lot of you do this better than I do, and we'll have some chance to discuss that. But for me, whether I was just framing it in class on the second day of a semester, or whether they have it in a book in Connections, framing college as a process of becoming, and that learning to learn and unlearn and relearn is the primary outcome of your education that's going to make you a great school teacher, engineer, scientist, whatever it is that you're going to do. That's your currency. It enables us to have conversations that we otherwise know intuitively, but we wouldn't be able to do. So I just wanted to frame it in that framework. And again, I hope that you'll take what you're hearing today and infuse it into your programs, because this is a really, really good stuff.
Thanks, Matt. We really wanted him to give you guys some context about this book because, like I said, I'm the assistant director of the ABLE office, the ABLE Center now. And one of the things that I oversee is what's called academic success coaching. And this is where students can sign up and they can come and visit with one of our coaches for a half an hour. We don't tutor them in content. Instead, we try to get to some of the underlying issues that they're having that are keeping them from academic success. Things like time management and planning and taking notes, some of those base study skills. And we had been trying for a while to find a framework that we could use to train other people in doing this, because Carolina has been doing this for years, and it's an instinct for her. She knows when to push a student and when to back off and what kinds of questions to ask. But trying to pass that along to other people was resulting to be very difficult. So what ended up happening is that as we looked through the different frameworks that were available for this academic success coaching, we kept finding things that we liked about them, but we couldn't ever find one framework that we really liked. And so by happy accident, we had just left a meeting with a vendor that was trying to sell us their training program. And we had talked about how, again, we felt like the academic part of academic success coaching was missing. And I went straight from there to the Connections training, where they were talking a lot about Matt's book and how Matt's book really is the framework for the Connections training. And I thought, bless you. And I thought, I think that's what the missing piece is. I think that's what we've been looking for, is being able to start somewhere where we say, okay, we want you to start out this conversation by thinking about who you are as a learner, and then we can start coaching you in other things. So Carolina and I got together, and we, all the puzzle pieces just snapped into place. All the things that we loved about other programs worked when we put it into the framework of this book. So we came up with what we are calling LAPS. We love the name LAPS because of the acronym, because these are the things that we like to go through with students. We like to go through their, really get them thinking about what their learner identity is, get them to identify where their agency is, and also help them to recognize the pathways that are available for them. We also love it just because the metaphor of doing LAPS and about how becoming a learner isn't something that has a finish line. It's something where you continue to go through these things, and as you do, they start to build on each other. If you can get a student to start talking about their identity as a learner, it feeds into them starting to recognize where their agency is, that they aren't helpless. And when they do that, then they start to recognize some pathways. They start to see stumbling blocks in a different way, which then goes back to feed into their agency and their learner identity again. So this is something that we have been using for the last few months in the academic success coaching that we do. And we have had some real transformational moments when students have been able to stop and think about themselves in the context of, I'm a learner. I came in struggling with this thing, but if I can back off a little bit and I can really think about, like Matt says, about the reason why I am here, the reason why I'm in this class, and the reason why I have come to visit you as a success coach, we have found that it's really meaningful for them. And we started to think that a similar thing could happen in an office hours situation where you were talking to a student. That would be a little bit different because you wouldn't be spending the whole half hour talking to them about their mindset and talking to them about their skills, their learning skills. But we really think that if you can start getting in the habit of introducing some questions about these things at the beginning and then bringing them back to the content, that it could be similarly transformative. And the reason why is because these also line up really, really well with three of the things that are just tend to be office hour challenges. The transactional mindset that students come in with, like, I want this, what do I have to do to get that from you? Also the learned helplessness, just I need somebody to save me, I need you as my instructor to rescue me from this situation that I found myself in. And also, like I said, misconceptions about struggling. The belief that if I've bumped up against a dead end or an obstacle, it must mean I'm not meant to be here. So I want to give you guys some examples of how we imagine this working, because like I said, we work for a half an hour trying to help them to get over these mindsets. But what's probably going to happen for you guys is, so before I came to this position, I taught Spanish as an adjunct here on campus for 18 years. And what would happen is a student would come into my office and say something like, man, I don't understand the difference between the preterite and an imperfect. And my archetype was critic. So I would probably just start saying, okay, well, what do you understand? What don't you? Let's find the gaps. Let's identify the gaps, and then let's fill them in, because my assumption is that you really want to know what you're doing wrong, so then you can start doing it correctly. But I want to kind of demonstrate for you how I can, if a student comes in with a question like that, how I can still address that, but I can also bring this into the conversation. So I'm going to start with Anthony. Anthony's my planted student. Yes, and he's struggling, and so he's going to read his question for me.
And this is a real question, because I have no idea. Could you go over again for me when to use the preterite versus the imperfect past tenses? I really need to score high in the high 80s on the next test we're having.
Okay, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something you guys get, a question that you get maybe like the first interaction, the first thing they say when they come into your office? And like I said, I think in the past I would have just jumped right in and said, okay, let's start problem solving. Let's get to the bottom of this content question. But I want to show you what happens if I instead stop and I say, that is a really good question. The difference between the preterite and the imperfect is so hard for us as English speakers because we don't have something that's similar. But let me ask you a question before we start. What's something you're hoping to get better at this semester, inside or outside of class? So think about that for a second. How do you imagine that that's going to change the conversation that you then have with your students? What do you guys notice? Yeah.
Well, it's not focusing on the topic necessarily, just broader, you as a person, your growth.
Yeah, you as a person. It is a great way to suddenly signal to them that I care about you as a learner. And that's one of my roles, is to care about you as a learner. Yeah, excellent. Anybody else? Yeah.
So the flip side of that is that you're ignoring their question. And so students may feel like, well, you're not addressing my question, so either you're not listening to me or I need to push harder and just, dig my heels in.
Yeah, and that's why I think it is important to contextualize it and to say, we'll get to your question, but just to get some information that will help me answer your question better, could you share with some of these things? And you guys will have to experiment with this and see if it works for you. You may find that it doesn't work to do this and that you just really do need to get into the content. And you may find that there are some students that just get really frustrated when you start doing this because they want to get to the content. But I think what we're trying to get at, the problem that we're trying to solve, is that sometimes there are students that, Matt was very gracious in talking about how there are students who are just going to get through no matter what we do. I think we have to admit that there are also students who aren't going to get through no matter how much we try. And what has happened for me in the past is when I have had interactions with those kinds of students, I have left the interaction knowing I probably didn't have any influence on them, but also feeling like I didn't do anything productive. This, when I run into a student that just really doesn't want to budge, I still end up, if I can go this route, if I can get them to maybe at least, if I can just plant a seed that maybe this is the purpose of the interaction with your professor, I feel like I have done something maybe to change the narrative for that student, even if I didn't get them to shift their mindset in that moment. Yeah, Cree.
So I teach writing, and the students that come to talk to me often come with their writing baggage, and so they're just like, well, what do you want me to say? Like, what do you want me to write? How do you want me to say it? And so when they do come, and I force them to meet with me, and I'm sure they love it, but when they do come to talk about their work, I have them set a writing goal, and then I can actually answer their question more specific. And it's better because I tell them, I know what I think already. I don't want you to guess what I think about anything. And if we have the same thoughts, like, why are you taking this class from me? That's not the goal. And so as a writing instructor, when they're already coming in with this idea of like, well, what do you want me to do? Just tell me and I'll do it. I have to work really hard to say, well, what do you care about in your own writing? And then let's shift that. And then we can see how in your way you can write what you want to write so that other people will understand it. So I found that asking that question, like, well, so tell me what's wrong with my paper so I can fix it. And go, wait, what do you think's wrong with it?
Yeah.
What do you think's wrong with it? And maybe we already agree, and so then I don't have to just like tell you all the stuff you already know, and we can focus on, okay, how do you want to grow in this area of your writing? So I found this question really productive in my discipline.
Yeah, and I think that even if the conversation stays transactional because the student insists on it being transactional, if I ask a question like this, and I ask this to Anthony, and he says, well, my in-laws are from Argentina, and so I really want to be able to communicate better with them. I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to approach it differently if I know he already has that personal connection. If he answers and he says, I just need to get these language credits done so I can graduate. Even if it stays in a transactional, like, okay, I'll give you the information you came in and asked for. Like Cree says, suddenly it's so much more efficient because I understand better what the question is and how it is couched. Anyone else? Comments or? If not, I'm going to have my Spanish student number 2 ask her question.
Could you go over again for me when to use the preterite versus the imperfect past tenses? I never really understood it because my Spanish instructor last semester wasn't great. The class was at this terrible time in the afternoon when I couldn't even focus. So now I just really feel behind and I don't even know where to start.
Okay, does that sound familiar? Maybe some of the actual data points are a little bit different, but so I still think that with a question like that, you could start here with learner identity. There's no reason why the LAPs have to go in order, but kind of what we were alluding to with some of your comments, starting with learner identity sometimes gives you an idea of what other questions you can ask. But when you get a sense for what they're coming in with is a sense of learned helplessness, then what if instead of launching into a question about her or saying, well, I know that instructor and I know she's great. What if instead I ask a question like this? Like, what options do you have that you could make moving forward this time to feel different for you? Like, what could you do? What are your options? What choices do you have available to you? How does that, I want you guys to sit with that for a second, and how is that going to change the interaction that I have with my Spanish student, Carol, if I first ask this question of her?
I believe that it forces the onus onto her to be able to identify where the disconnect was in the previous class and maybe why the afternoon class didn't work or why the issues existed, and go back to that self-reflection of what do I potentially need to do to make this change or to be effective.
Yeah, perfect. Because what I am kind of saying here is, no, this isn't my problem. This is your problem, and not in a dismissive way. In a like, this is great. This is your problem. Like look at what you get to. Let's work on fixing this problem. But it is in your lap. Let me help you talk through some options. But remember that this is something that this is your journey, and this is your choose your own adventure. And you need to be invested in deciding which one of the options you do moving forward. I have even in the past with some super stubborn students, as they start listing what their options are, I will say, well, what about dropping out of school? And they'll say, I can't, I'm not going to do that. And I'll say, but why not? Because sometimes even then you can get them to the point where they recognize what it is that they still value enough to be there. Why did you even come in and visit with me? Other students don't come in and visit with me. So even just going through like even the worst options, sometimes that can really help them to frame why that they do have options they're not choosing. They're not dropping out. They did come and visit with you. And I have found this to be really powerful. Any other comments or any other observations? Yeah, Melanie.
I also feel like the students leave more empowered, that they have more hope when they can take the responsibility on themselves, and they're not spending the whole time trying to convince us of what kind of learner they are if we start with that identity first.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by like putting it in their lap is actually putting it back on them. I think is actually one of the kindest things that we could do. Not just that, but say like I'll be there and I'll support you. But isn't this exciting that you are in this interesting situation where you're going to develop some problem-solving skills? Yeah. Anything else? Anyone else? If not, I'm going to move on to my third Spanish student, Michelle.
Could you go over again for me when to use the preterite versus the imperfect past tenses? I've been spending a ton of time on this, flashcards, reviewing notes, but it still doesn't stick. I'm just not a language person. I've even started thinking maybe I shouldn't keep taking Spanish if I can't get something this basic.
All right. Does that sound familiar? I feel like I picked like the 3 best actors in the class. You guys, that was so convincing. All right, so this is our third thing that sometimes we run into, which is misunderstanding what it means to struggle in a class. Like, I'm struggling in a class, and what are the misconceptions that your students, what do they believe if they are struggling in your class? What do they come in believing?
They're not cut out for this.
Not cut out for this.
It's only me.
It's only me. Yeah, Anthony.
I am not this, like, I am not language person.
I'm not a math person, I'm not a language person. Yeah, exactly. Anything else?
Problem is the instructor. It's your problem.
Yeah,
You're not a good teacher. I don't understand how you teach.
right. Yeah, that's not how I learn. Yeah, there's a mismatch. Yeah, so what happens if Michelle comes to me and she asks the question in that way? If I stop and I say, well, first of all, let's back up. Like I said, first of all, I would try to contextualize this and say, yeah, let's definitely talk about the difference between preterite and imperfect. But first, could you tell me about anything you do really well now that you struggled with at first? Like, what's something that you used to really struggle with and now you're really good at? How does that change the way that question has just been delivered to me, to ask that?
I think it shows like growth, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling my teenager all the time. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know things now, but you'll learn it. You just have to keep trying.
Right. It tells them that this block that you're at, this dead end that you found, this thing you stumbled over is not a sign of anything. It's a sign that that wasn't the right path and that we just need to back up and we need to do something again. Because a lot of times if they will share with you musical instruments, sports, art, things like that, you can say to them, did you ever mess up when you were learning to play the trumpet? Like, of course I messed up when I learned. And did that make you stop? No, because I kind of understood that. Now looking back, I understand that that was part of the process. Anything else? Yeah, agree.
I found this question too, which is helpful when you can point at their work to show progress that you've already seen also. So sometimes it's like, well, how do you feel about your first assignment? Like, you didn't do as well on it as you wanted to, but you revised it and it looks good. What do you think? And they'll go like, I don't even know. I'm not a writer. I'm not good at this thing. I'm just taking this class because I have to. And then I go, okay, well, here's what I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Your first draft, you had this. Then you revised it, now you had that. Maybe it's not even, maybe it's in the same draft. In this paragraph, this was awesome, but for some reason you struggled with it here. How come you're so good at writing it in this way? And what happened? Like, how'd you develop that skill? And I think that's also helpful because it helps us keep to like, this is why I came here, I need help with this assignment. But you're also showing them themselves how they've already struggled and are successful in your discipline and on that particular assignment. And sometimes like the whole paper just sucks. I'm like, I don't think so. This part was great. So what can we do to make that greatness continue to last? What are these options that we can do to flesh the rest of that out with your writing voice?
Yeah, if we can show them that you always have other pathways available. A dead end doesn't mean that like you guys were saying, I'm not cut out for this. A dead end means we go back and we see if we can find another path. We almost always have multiple pathways that we can take to get to success. So I'm going to pass the time now. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So from a mental health perspective, this is very much solution focused kind of therapy approach, and so it's really helpful for follow up questions like when you struggled with that, what internal ways of thinking did you stay on track? Did you keep going? And then also what external supports did you have at that time? Because even if they don't have them now, let's say they had their parents helping them with chores at home and now they can't do all the adulting things by themselves and do schoolwork, then helping them sort of start to think about those, oh, this external support has changed, can I get it back?
Yeah, such a good point because again, you're blocking that idea that this dead end means I don't belong here because you're saying, but remember how with all of these other helps, remember how you did it before? You did do it before and you still have all of that muscle memory to do it. You just need to apply. That's one of the things we find in this academic success coaching is that they sometimes don't recognize how important the skills that they already have from other areas of their life, how it just transfers over to school. she ran hurdles in high school. And I said, so did you stop every time you got to hurdles? She's like, no. And thinking it through that, she's like, you're right. Like, I would just keep running. So I probably need to do that with my academics. So building on successes that they've already had, building on times when they did get over the stumbling blocks, or they did back up from a dead end and find another pathway, can be super powerful for them because they've already done it. Right.
All right. Okay, so Jenny did a wonderful job describing labs, and I'm an academic success coach, and so I do this repeatedly with students. I did it last night, and I feel it works wonderful. With the learner identity, I had to think myself also, what is my learner identity? If I'm asking you to tell me how you describe yourself as a learner, I probably need to do it myself as well. And it was really eye-opening. So maybe this is something for you to think about as an instructor. When I talk to my students, I have them write, I am a learner who, and then ... after we have the conversation. And so they're like, instead of coming to me and say, I procrastinate, when we have the conversation, it becomes, I am a learner who cares about turning my assignments on time. So that mindset, that shift, really helps to put in a more positive perspective. So think about you as an instructor, what you care about, what you value, with your students coming to your office hours. Okay, so I'm an instructor who. In academic success coaching, we serve all students. We're in the business of academic hope. And that doesn't mean that it's the end of the semester and the student comes, grades don't look good, most likely going to fail. There isn't a hope that maybe they're going to pass, but the hope will be that they have some pathways. Maybe the hope it is you will retake this class, and I tell them in coaching, look how much more ahead you will be in the others that never took the class. Now you know at least how it's structured. Now at least you know how much time you need to study. So we bring that kind of academic hope for the students. When students come and they have their agency. They have their agency to act or not act, to do what we suggest and try it out or not. So they're in the driver's seat. In coaching, we do a lot of questions. Then the student kind of talks most of the time. It's interesting because they come and they think, and maybe they come to your office hours and they want the answer. They want like the vending machine, I have this, you give me that, But if you transform your hours into more of a learning experience of how they see themselves as learners, what's their agency, what's their responsibility? If we get to the end of the semester and things don't look good, they had a responsibility in this, right? It's good that they're coming to talk to us, and then we can just say what needs to happen. And then we have the pathways. And in coaching, the student comes up with their own pathways most of the time. And they're like, yeah, I should have done this, or what could you do different? What other ways you have to learn that preterite imperfect, which if you don't know Spanish, is super important, that you use it and use it well. And so in what other ways can you learn that? And have them come up with their answers, and they'll be more invested than if I just say, well, do this, and do this. And so that's how the pathways work. Let's see. So you're an instructor, you're like, so what is it in there for me? You're talking about the student, how they're going to feel when they leave, but why should you do labs, right? Why should you change what you're already doing, okay? I feel that with changing the way you do your office hours, tweak them. I'm not saying do this whole thing, be a success coach, but I think you will connect with your students. And what happens when you connect with someone? They usually listen to you more. Or maybe they see your subject maybe in a different way. They can relate to you, you can relate to them. So having that connection, I think is huge. For a coach, it is very important that the students connect so they'll be able to try new things and they become more teachable. So if your students come, that connection is very important. What Labs does is create positive emotions. And I know we're not therapists and we're in the business of academics, but we need to have those emotions positive, so we have high hope and we can continue. Some people have high hope as naturally, right? And so when we do this labs, students tend to not be sidetracked by failure. They want to try the pathways. This didn't work. I want to try this other one. They'll have less anxiety about your class, about your subject. Students, sometimes they're low hope because by nature, or maybe it's a difficult subject and there's no way around it. It's just difficult. So with low hope, when we do these labs, students tend to persevere longer. Yeah, it's still going to be hard maybe I'm not going to love it, but I can do it. And they'll expend more effort just to try to get through it. All right. What does labs contribute to you as a teacher or becoming a mentor to the students? It says, hopeful young people need adult role models, so that's us, right? Who consistently are responsive, available, and caring. And I was not saying that you are not those things, but when you foster these connections with learner identity, with agency and pathways, those come out and the students can see that you are caring, that you are responsive, that you are available. Such adult responsiveness, availability, and caring provide the secure base of hope that allows young people to find ways to achieve their own important academic and life goals. So again, we bring hope to our students, they set goals, and then find ways to achieve their goals. And I hope that's what we want to do in our office hours, right? That they will come and they'll leave and they will have thought maybe a little bit about, who they are as learners, what they can achieve. When Matt was saying, what will you come to university to learn? And it's really transformative to students to understand, like, you will learn skills that you can take when you graduate. And students are like, yeah, we're going to learn skills, the soft skills and things like that. And I tell them, we still need good accountants, right? You still need to know your subject. We still need new mathematicians, good mathematicians. You need to know your subjects. But if that's all you focus on, then you're missing a piece. So I encourage you to try this. I know it might be different to have these kind of questions or conversations. And like Jenny said, this is not the whole 30 minutes of your office hours. That's what I do. So send them to me if you want me to have those conversations. If in those conversations you feel that the student needs, the student really doesn't know how to manage the time. You're not the person to teach them how to manage the time. I can. And so I'll spend the time with them. Or the student doesn't take notes, and that's why they're missing half of the information, and send them to the coach, and we can help with that. And so I have this picture of a flower, so I thought, okay, labs could be like cheesiness has to come out, right? Flowers. And so one flower could be, your learner identity. Another flower of different color could be the agency, the goals that the student sets. The other flowers would be the pathways. Is this something that you talk about in your office hours, and then the student can take it with them? And so, and then there they go. So, and yeah.
All right, so we have a handout for you guys because we know that we wanted to give you some ideas of some of the questions that you could ask. I would definitely practice this if I were you. There's a link to the doc if you would prefer a digital copy, but here are some physical copies. Just some ideas of the kinds of questions you can start asking under each one of these. I would definitely practice because you want this to come across in your own voice. You don't want to sound like a robot that's asking a bunch of canned questions. But here are some ideas of how you could just go through the questions and see which ones sound like me. And then on the back, we've also included some ways that you could then pivot back to the content. You could tie in for them. Well, this is why I wanted to ask you those questions. Let's get to your content now. But let me give you an idea of why we started out talking about these kinds of things. And we are excited to hear whether or not these are helpful for you. Any questions or any comments that you guys have for us?
Backing up just a little bit when I see the office hours. So many of my students, I'm from Blanding, so that's part of the reason. They don't know what that means. They think it means it's my time, not their time. So I changed it to student availability, or I have pop-up hours for students. so that they know, like, if I'm free, I'll just post it, like, hey, come on, I'm over here, you know, or meet somewhere else. I meet in the quad, or I meet at the cafeteria. But they don't understand that term.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We use drop-in hours.
Yeah, drop-in is another way.
Yeah, that's a great idea, just to give them some context, because especially, you know, if you've got a bunch of first-generation students, they're not going to know what office hours means. And it is a time when not only will you welcome them, but you